Welcome back, everybody, to How to Build a Blog with Laravel. I am your host, J.A. Curtis. You guys can call me Alex, and you guys have been begging for the next videos, and I apologize for the great delay. It's been like 2 weeks is when I saw. I just looked on YouTube, and that was the last video. So, anyway, it's been crazy. I got sick 2 weeks ago, and I got something stuck in my eye, long story short, and my eye was swollen like a golf ball. It looked nasty and it hurt so bad that even just sitting here, like I couldn't concentrate, couldn't work. I was miserable and it sucked and I couldn't do videos. I couldn't focus on anything. It was horrible. So that put me out for a week, and then getting caught up and everything on work the next week, I've just not had an ounce of time. But now we're getting back into it. We're going to have time here. And I appreciate the support, guys. The fact that you guys keep asking me for the next videos just makes me know that I need to get on it, and just kind of gives me the confidence that you guys love the videos and you guys want it. So that keeps me going. So I appreciate it. Okay, enough with the excuses. Let's dive into this video, because this is part 33 of our series. And in this video, we're going to be finishing up our categories, and basically just allowing us to, when we create a blog post, to attach a category to the blog post from the blog post create form. All right, so it's going to allow us to basically attach that that category when we create the blog post. That's the focus of this video. That'll basically just kind of round up our categories, and this is going to be a quick and casual episode. I'm not going to do a lot of cuts in this video. It's going to be one quick cut, just so I can get as many videos done today as possible, and you guys can have more videos to watch and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a casual episode today instead of one that's like really finely tuned and stuff like that. Got a lot of stuff coming up on the channel. Stay tuned for that. I've got some stuff I really want to talk to you guys about. Got new series I've already got planned. I'm already planning the next series. Advanced Authentication is coming up. That's the #1 most requested series. And then I'm going to be doing one where we work with APIs. Probably the second most popular requested series is going to be one where we're actually going to create our own API, and then we're going to tie into the API. So it's going to allow you to do all sorts of stuff, like you could ultimately create an iPhone app from it, because the iPhone apps need an API that's how they communicate back and forth. So we could do an iPhone or an Android app, obviously. We could do like a JavaScript, like an ember.js type single page application or whatever that ties into the to the API. We can do a Chrome extension. We can do all that stuff. So I'm trying to think of what else. I had it all planned out, but basically allowing you to have all these different things, because they're all going to tie into the API, and so it allows you to create pretty advanced. Oh, even like a native application for Windows or Mac is the other thing I was thinking about doing, and all those are going to tie into the API. So it allows you it's going to show you how to create basically a service. So if you're creating a product here that you want to be selling or something like that, a lot of times just having the web app's not enough anymore. You have to have all these other services, and that involves creating an API and then learning how to tie into it. And so that's what I want to do in one of the next series coming up, which is going to go into some advanced stuff, talk about APIs, and also advanced authentication. So it's going to tie up a lot of what you guys are begging me for. So if you have any other suggestions for videos, you can just hit them to me over on Twitter. Just let me know what you guys are looking for. I am listening to all of them and appreciate the feedback. Let's dive into this video now. I don't want to waste too much time talking about what's coming up, but just know it is coming up. The last thing that's coming up is improved video quality. I know this isn't the best. I don't have like a really good backdrop. This is in my office, and basically just I could either waste a bunch of time going and getting stuff, or I could just make a video. And I know you guys are dying for the videos, so I'm going to just work on the videos now. But I do want to get some better video quality and like a nicer backdrop, and I'm kind of working on some of that stuff as well. So all that's coming up. Okay, let's dive into the video, guys. Let's focus on categories. First things first, I want to show you guys what we're working on, or what I want to get done, and then we'll go in and do it. So I need to launch the server. I'm already in my blog folder, so PHP Artisan Serve will launch it. It's the easiest way to launch the server. And then from here, I should be able to just, launch the server. Okay, let's go ahead and log in. We already have our authentication set up, so Let's go ahead and log in. I think, was this my, okay, it's been a while. Okay, so I'm logged in, and from here you can see that I can view all the posts. I can also view the categories. So we've got all of this. I can create a new category, newest category. It creates a new category right there. And all we really need to do at this point is basically, and then we want to be able to create it from the blog post. So if we go to posts, we're going to want to be able to, over here, to add a category. And I'm thinking about adding that here on the side. So we've got our created at and last updated, and then we want to be able to just do a, to change the category in here. So that's kind of my thought. That's what we're going to be working on. And then the other thing is if you're doing a new post, if we click here on new post, we're going to want to make a field here that just allows us to select the category for our video. And then we're going to save that to our blog post when we're done. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I'm going to open up our project in our text editor. All right, so first things first, we need to get into we're actually going to be working on the posts model, or the post controller this time, because we're going back to when we created and edited the posts. Even though we're going to be adding categories to it, we don't need to do that in the categories controller, because the categories controller is where we handle basically managing the categories, the CRUD for the categories. And even though we're working with categories, we need to go to the post controller, because the post controller is what handles creating posts, and we're just now adding the ability to attach a category when creating posts. Hopefully that makes sense. So if we go under apps and HTTP controllers, we can go into our post controller. Okay, so now the first thing we want to do is we're going to work on, when we create a blog post, we need to have the option to select a category from our blog post. Okay, so while we're creating a blog post, we're going to want a drop down that would basically have all the categories so that we can select a category that that blog post associates with, and then we could, and then later when we store it, we'll save that in the correct table or column in the database table. All right, so first things first is, in order to render that on the screen, that drop down, we need to know what all of the categories we currently have in our database are. And so in order to do that, when we come to this create function, we actually need to grab all the categories first so we know what categories we have, and then we can render the select field from that information. All right, so here when we do the create now, instead of simply returning the view, we actually need to go out, find all the categories, store them in a variable, and then pass that variable into the view so we can render the select field. So first things first, we're going to create a variable called categories. We're going to set it equal to category and all. All right, so this is just going to grab all the categories that are currently in our database and throw them into this variable called categories. Now, in order to do that, after we've done that, we also need to pass that into the to the view. Otherwise, all of our work is, pointless. So we're going to call it with categories, and we're going to set it equal to categories, like that. All right. Now, the one thing that we're going to run into here is that I don't think we've called category. The category model is not accessible from within here, so we need to come up to the top. And we'll just say use app category. All right, and that's just going to allow us to link to this app/category.php file that's over here. And that allows us access to the model called category. Otherwise, we'll get an error because it's namespaced outside of our, it's not inside of this namespace, okay? So it's outside of that, so it can't find it. All right, now that will allow us to basically pull all of our categories. In order to render it on the screen, we need to go now over to our view, and then we'll render it in the view. So let's go back over to resources, views, and this is under posts and our create. And it's going to be inside of here where you just have to figure out where we want to create this select form. Okay, so we've started with our title, then we've got our slug, and then our body, and then the button to create the post. So I'm thinking we just want to create the category here between the body and the slug. So after the slug, we will just have a label. And that label will tell it, we'll post it to category here. All right, and then we're going to create a select form. All right, and this select is a drop down basically. Okay, now actually, to be honest, what I'm going to tell you here is we're actually not going to use the form helper on this. And the reason for this is just because I find it really confusing when you're rendering dynamically to use the select field, okay? Because what you have to do is you actually end up having to create arrays, and it gets confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to generate it manually, okay? So we're going to create a select box, okay? And that select, we're just going to give it a class of form control. I'm basically just doing raw HTML here, okay? And we're going to use a loop to generate the options inside of it, okay? And then we're going to give it a name of category, and that name obviously is just to correspond with the label. And that's all we need for the select. So we're going to go ahead and give it some space here. And here's where we're going to loop through all of the options, okay? So normally what you would do, just to kind of give it some clarity here, is we would probably do like option value equals, say, 1, and then you would give it like first category, or whatever the name of the category is. And then you would close your option, and you would have multiple of these. This is basically what it would look like. And you had a value of 2 and a value of 3, and then you'll just have the name of your category here, okay? These obviously aren't the name of the categories because we want to generate them dynamically, but this is how it would work. Okay, so that's kind of what the goal we're trying to get to, but we're going to use a loop, and we're going to use that category variable that we passed in to generate this dynamically. Now, the reason we want to focus on this value 1 or value 2 is because what we're storing in the database is actually not the name of the category. It's actually the integer that represents the ID number of the category. So if I come over and I open up SQL Pro here and just go into our database. Okay, so if I come over here, and we're going to be saving this into the posts, right? So we're already creating our title and our body, our slug, and then we've got this category ID over here. So what we're saving when someone selects a category, what we actually save in the database is not the name of the category, it's the ID number that then points to the table of the category, okay? So for example, if you wanted a marketing tutorials category on there, we don't actually write marketing tutorials over here in the category ID. The way we associate it with marketing tutorials is that we would give it the ID number for marketing tutorials, so number 3. And then in our post, when we create our post, we would give that post an ID of 3, and that will automatically generate, it'll automatically tie to this categories, to the third ID, and then we'd have access to all the information in here. So the name or any other information we would have if this were a more advanced model, which it isn't. Okay, so that's what we got to note here, is that when the user wants to reference the category by the name, right? Marketing. I don't know that marketing tutorials is number 3. That can be hidden from the user. The user never needs to know that. However, the user does need to. So the user needs to see this marketing tutorials. That's what they need to know. But the computer just needs to know it by the ID number. And that's why we break it up in here. The value is going to represent the ID number, because when we go to save it, we're going to be, when we go to save the brand new post, we're going to save the ID number into that category ID field. But what the user needs to see is the name of the category, because they don't know what the ID numbers are. They only know it by the name of the category. Okay, so this is going to be the name of the category. This is going to be the ID number, and that's going to allow it to work a lot easier. If that doesn't make sense yet, just wait, and you'll see when we go to save it why we want it to be that way. The last thing I'm going to change, I just remembered, is if I go back over to my over into this here. This isn't 100% necessary, but I've kind of already told you guys it's really good if you can match the name of your form fields, match it to the column name in the database. Okay, when you go to do model form binding, which is something we did last time to automatically gender, like when you're editing the blog post and stuff like that, if these column names match the form names, it makes it much easier to render automatically, and it also just helps keep things straight because you have the same format every time, so I don't get confused with what I'm working with because we're always we're matching the column name and the field name together, so then I can reference it as the same thing and always know that I'm going to get what I expect. Okay, so we're going to change the category ID is how we're going to reference that. So over here where I said we gave the name, I'm going to do category ID, and then the name down here, I'm going to give it category ID. So this and this match, and then these both match with the column name in the database, the column name in the database, right? So that's what we're going to do there. And now we just need to dynamically generate this options field. So let's go ahead. I'm going to delete all but one of them because we only need one. And then we're going to create a for each loop over here inside of with Blade. Okay, so we're going to do for each, and we're going to give it category or categories as category. All right, so it's just a basic for each loop, but we're using we're going to be using the Blade syntax for this. So we're going to do end for each down here, and this allows us to access each individual. So we're going to have an array. It's not an array; it's actually an object. But we're going to have an object called categories that we passed in that contains every single category in our categories table, right? It came over from here. So we said categories is going to be all of our categories that are in the categories field. Okay, so what this is going to contain is this entire list right here. It's going to include the ID number for each object, the name they created at and the updated at for every single one of these objects. And then we're going to loop through and just grab the ID number out of that, put it as the value for the select field, and then we're going to grab the name and put that as the what's visible to the user, okay? And we're just going to loop through all of these just like that. So that's what we're doing over here. So if we come back over here, we're saying grab the categories object and then grab the one category out of there and call it category. And then when we loop through, we'll go to the next one and so forth. Okay? Now, every time we loop through this, we're going to create an option. We're going to have a value, and we're going to set the value equal to the ID number for our currently selected category. Okay, so if we do category ID, this is going to grab the current category we're on, the ID number, and plop it in for the value. And then for over here, where we actually list what is visible to the user, what we can do is we'll use Blade again, and then we'll just do category and name. Right? It was name. Let's just double check. It's been a while. Name. Yep. Okay, so that's going to be the name of the category. And that should render everything for us. Let's go ahead and just check it out in the browser. I'm going to save this project, and I'm just going to refresh over here. A site can't be reached because we closed the server. So PHP Artisan. Let's just open a new tab real fast. PHP Artisan serve. And just refresh. Perfect. Okay, so now we have our category, and you can see it pulled in all of our categories here. Let's just really quick inspect the source. And I just want to show you guys, okay, so we've got the select form right here. So let's open up the select form. You can see that the option, we have the value for number 1 is PHP Tuts. The value for number 2 is Ruby on Rails tutorials. The value for number 3 is marketing tutorials. And this should look familiar. It should match because we did it correctly. This looks exactly the same, and that's exactly what we want. So when I come over here and I select personal updates, what's actually happening is the value of this select is going to be equal now to the value of 4. It doesn't going to be personal updates. That's just what the person sees. The value is 4. So now when I come to save this into the database, when I create a new post, in the category ID, I'm going to save the number 4, and that's going to now link over to personal updates in our categories field, okay? That's what relationships are all about, is that simplicity. It's kind of confusing to wrap your head around at first, but once you get it, it makes a lot of sense and it makes it much easier. Okay, so we've gotten exactly what we wanted. We can now select what we want, and what we see here is the visible thing, but behind the scenes is the actual ID number, okay? So now what we need to do is actually save it into the database. I could click save right now or create post. And what it'll do is it doesn't know about this category field, so it's going to save everything else, but it won't save the category ID. And that's because we haven't actually added that to the store method in our posts, the post controller. So let's head on over to our post controller. Shoot, don't open up Xcode. All right. Let's go head back over to our post controller. And here in the store function, you can see that we validate that the title is there, that the slug is there, that the body is there. The other thing that we want to validate now is that the category is there. So we're going to do category ID, and we're going to make sure that it's equal to, we'll say it's required, and that it's a numeric. Okay, should be an ID number. That's just going to create it. If someone tries to spoof it and try to save something other than an integer, it'll just catch it. But it's very unlikely that we'll have an error there. Just really quick, let's head back over to Laravel.com. And what I want to do is go to the documentation, search validation rules. And okay, available validation rules. And I think actually what we want to do is integer. Let's see if that's an option. It is integer. Okay, so it must be, we're actually going to want to change this to integer. So let's go back over. Shoot, I opened Xcode again. Okay, and let's change this to integer. That'll be a whole number that way. Okay, so now we've added this extra category ID. If we wanted to clean this up, we could. Okay, and now the only thing we need to do is to change here is we actually need to save it now when we store it to the database. So once again, we're going to do post category ID and set it equal to the request, that contains the category ID. All right, so request category ID will just grab what's in the post request, because we're going to submit this as a post, and then in the post data is this request contains all the post data. Inside of there's something called category ID, which associates with the category ID. That's why we named it category ID over here. Okay, and then we're telling it to save it as a brand new post in the category ID column. Okay, so it's matching up the value that we select. So this value here, the integer, it's going to match it up to save it into that column over there. So now we should be saving it with our post. So let's go ahead and save that and test it out. So we're going to go, I'm going to refresh this page. So it's got the new code, and we're going to say our newest blog post. Newest blog. And we're going to save it as a personal update just so it's not the default. And then we're going to say this is the newest blog post. It is awesome. Okay, now we're going to click create post, and that saved everything. And we obviously we've got this. We haven't told it to display the category over here yet. That's another thing that we need to work on. But if I now come over to our homepage, you can see that our newest blog post is showing up. If I click read more, you can see that it's posted in personal updates. Okay, so it's all associating it correctly, so we know it's working. If I come over to our database, we go to posts. We have our newest blog post here. You can see it's got all the information that we submitted. And for the category ID now, we have number 4. And obviously number 4 associates in the categories table with personal updates. Okay, so everything's working correctly. The only last few things we need to finish up our project now is basically just make it visible when we go, when we're searching in our posts. When we view a post like this, we may want to actually show the category over here. So we just need to do that real quick. And then the other thing is when we're editing it, we need the option to edit the category. So maybe we can do another drop down over here that edits the category. Okay, so let's go ahead and set that up. So those are the last two things, and then we're done. So we can actually just kind of pull down here. So when we do show, you can see that it's actually grabbing all the post. By default, because we made that relationship, when we just grab the specific post, we can actually deep link it into and grab the category out of it. So there's actually no additional work needed in the controller to get the show function to work. All we need to do is work inside of the view. So let's come back over to our views, posts, and we're going to do the show page, show.blade.php. And the only difference we're going to make here is just be able to display it. So for example, we've got our URL here. What we could do is let's go ahead and just copy one of these and let's paste it right below. And now we're just going to make this be the category, and it's going to display the current category. So we're going to just come over here and render the current category. Okay, so we're just going to go post, category, and name, just like that. Okay, that'll actually grab the name from our post, and that's all that's needed in order to get that to work. So this should now show our category. Let's go ahead and check it out. Let's come over to our posts. Let's choose a random post, click view, and now you can see that over here we have categories, and it automatically grabbed the name of the category right here with marketing tutorials. That's how we can actually grab the category. So nothing additional was needed. It's automatically pulled in thanks to that relationship that we set up before. Next thing we wanted to work on was we want the ability to edit it. Okay, so if we come down here, when we edit it, this is what displays the edit form. We just need to display all of the categories just like we did in the create post. Okay, so just like we did up here, we just need to know what all the categories were so we could render that select form. We need to do the exact same thing here. We need to know what all the categories are so we can render it in our, okay, so we actually have to, let's just do this and then we'll see where we are. So we'll create a variable called categories. We're gonna do just like we did before. We're gonna do category all. It's gonna grab all of our categories. And then we also need to make sure we pass it in. Okay, so we're gonna do with categories, and we'll set it equal to categories, obviously. Okay, so we're gonna pass in the post variable and the categories variable, and that'll be available in the edit, post.edit. So let's go over to post.edit, and you can see here, we're actually doing model form binding. Now, in order to get model form binding to work automatically, we would actually have to go back and do that select field. So let me show you how to make it work with the select field, with the form helper. Okay, so just like here, we can do form label, category ID, and we'll do a category like that. And what we didn't do last time is we actually created a select form automatically. So now I'm going to show you how to create it manually. Okay, so it's a little bit confusing how we're going to manually create this select form, but we're going to make it work. Okay, so now if we want to use this select form, I'm going to show you how to make this work real quick. Now the reason I kind of avoided it last time was because it can get confusing the way that you set up this category. So let me show you the syntax first, and then we'll show you how to make it work. So the first thing is if you wanted to do it with this helper, obviously the first parameter we need is the name of the field, so category ID. Okay, so this matches this, and it matches the column name. Okay, so that's what this is. Now the second parameter here is going to be an array. All right. Now, an array. All right. Now this is going to be an associative array. So you'll have a key and a value. All right. And this key, so the key will become the value of the select form. Okay. So the key here will become, if I open up our create here, will become this value right here. So this value equals, that'll become the key. The key will become that value, all right? And then this value right here, what you set the key equal to, will become the actual what's displayed to the user, okay? Will become that there. So what we need to do is we need to create an array, basically, that has the ID number over here as the key, and then as the value here with it, they'll actually have what's displayed to the user. And so you can have as many of these as you want, obviously. Key number 2, set it equal to value 2, and it'll automatically generate that select form. Now the second, let's see, that's the end of our array. Now the third value is our default, okay? So whatever we want to be the default value would be here. And then you can go into another array that has like all of your classes and everything like that. The ID numbers and stuff like that. So that's kind of the syntax of what we're creating, okay? I wanted to show you guys that just in case, because it gets kind of confusing sometimes with what I'm about to do. What we're gonna do is we're gonna generate this array really fast, and then we're gonna plop that array inside of here. Now it's a bad idea to do that, to create that array inside of our view. We don't really want to be doing that. We should be doing that in the controller. So let's go back over to the post controller. And what I'm going to do here is instead of actually passing in this one right here, we're going to create an array that's all set up to plop right inside of our select form. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's do categories. And that's going to grab all of our categories. And then we're going to do a loop. So we're going to do a for each loop. And we're going to grab categories now, our fresh categories. And then we're just going to grab category, just like that. Okay. And then we should actually create a new variable here. If we create a variable inside of here, it'll be locked into the scope of the for each. It's just a PHP thing. So we actually need to create that variable outside of the scope of the for each, and then it will be available to access outside the for each loop. Okay, so we're going to create another variable called cats, and we're just going to make it equal to an empty array. Okay. So you can do this, or you can do this, whichever you prefer. All right, so cats is an empty array, and it can be whatever you want to call it though. And inside of here, we're going to do cats, and then we're going to set it equal to category ID. So this will be the key. So the key for this item will become the ID number, and then we'll set that equal to category name. All right. And then we're just going to loop through this, and it'll just keep adding things to the category array. All right. In the end, this cats array will become we'll have it all set up. Okay, so it'll have an array where all of the keys are the ID number and all of the values are the actual thing to display to the user. Okay, so with categories here, what we're going to do is just, instead of passing in categories, because that'll pass in this thing up here, we actually need to pass in this array that we're working on. So we're just going to change this to cats, for just kind of an abbreviation for categories. That's why I called it cats. You can call it whatever you want. So we're going to pass in this, but it's still going to be called categories when we get to the view. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Because it's kind of confusing. Categories, the variable right here, is represents just this object, all of the objects. We rendered an array over here that has the ID number and the name matched up, and we passed that into the view, but we're calling it categories in the view. So if I save that, come back over here, over to the edit, what we're going to do now is we'll have access to a variable called categories. Okay, and categories will be equal to what we were creating right here. Hopefully that makes sense, okay? We renamed it when we passed it into the view because we called it categories, even though it's called cats over here. Okay, so we're going to pass that in. It's called categories, and that's really all we need. The other items are optional. Oh, we do need the class. So let's set the default to null, and then we're going to create an array, and we'll have class and set class equal to form control, just like that. Okay, so that'll have our category all set up. You might be wondering why I set the default to null. It should be equal to the default should be equal to the ID of the current category. So you could do that if you wanted. You could do post, set the default equal to post category ID, and then that'll automatically make that the default so it shows up. But it should automatically happen when we because we have model form binding. So either way you do it, it'll work. So I'm just going to set it equal to null, and then the model form binding will take over and then change it to the default value for us. All right. So there we go. That's everything we need. Let's go ahead and take a look at it now. We're going to go over here to edit. And you can see over here that category marketing tutorials is already selected. All right. So it's worked correctly. We have all the other categories, so I could change it if I wanted. But the default when I refresh here is select marketing tutorials, okay? And we know it's marketing tutorials. It says it's right here. If we looked in the database, it would be marketing tutorials, okay? So everything is lining up really nicely. It looks like there's just some styling issues. There must have been a class on here. What were we adding? Form spacing top. We were adding this form spacing top class to give them extra space, it looked like, on the label. So under the label, there we go. All right, so now I refresh it. Now they have extra spacing. Not super important, but anyway, you can see that it's automatically created that. This works right here, so we're all done with that. I think we have everything we need. We can, oh, we don't. We're missing one thing. We need to save it after we edit it, okay? So if we come over to Post Controller, when we do the update function, we need to, when we resave the changes, we just need to save in the category ID as well, okay? So, all right, so what we need to do here is we just need to go category ID, set category ID equal to required and to integer, like that. And then we'll just grab it, copy this, and paste the same thing down here. Now, if you remember what we had to do here, we had to get a little fancy because we had to check to see if the slug had changed. Otherwise, we run into a unique error. That was covered in a previous video. That's why we're having to do it twice. But basically, we're just making sure category ID is still an integer. And if it's an integer, then we continue, it'll validate, and then we just need to save it. Oops. We just need to save it when we do down here. So while we're saving everything else, let's just go ahead and we save the category ID. Okay, so we're gonna save category ID, and we just set it equal, just like we did before, to our category ID, just like that. Okay, so that should help you guys. That should have everything set up. We are now able to, in our posts, we can, we actually have our categories here. You can see that we've got our categories. You can see that we can edit our categories now. If I want to change this newest blog post from personal updates to writing skills and click save, you can see now that it's got its writing skills, so that works. We can also view it when we're just viewing the post, we have it. And on our actual blog, you can see that we have, it's now changed. It says writing skills over here. So we now have every ability. Oh, and then the last thing we did was when we create a new post, we now have the option when we create it to set a category. All right. So that finishes up the categories. The categories are all done. That's everything we needed for categories. That should have been a great review for you guys because you should know all of that stuff. I just kind of want to walk you through it, show you how it is. Anyway, not the most exciting video, but in the next video, we're going to learn something new. We're going to be working on tags. Tags are going to be almost identical to categories. So hopefully we can go faster in it. But the only difference is the many-to-many relationship. So we're basically duplicating the categories, how we worked with categories, and we did it as a many-to-many relationship instead of a one-to-many relationship, okay? So we'll talk about how we do that in the next video, but that's basically all we're going to be doing in the next video. And then we're getting really close to the end. We're going to do a file upload. We're going to do a few other last things. Comments is the other thing we're going to work on. And that basically sums up everything in our videos. So we're almost done with this series. I got some other great series coming up. Please be sure to stay tuned, and thanks so much for your guys' support. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can hit me up on Twitter. Twitter's a great way to get a hold of me. My handle on Twitter is _JA Curtis, JACURTIS. You can get a hold of me there. You can obviously email me as well. I'm a little behind on emails right now, but you can email me at it's hello@jacurtis.com. And that basically sums it up. I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for your great support, and keep working hard. You guys are doing a good job. See you later.